Alright, so this is my screencast of what I've dubbed Lesson 6, or Day 6, of Unit 1, for Lobbying for Change is the title, as you can see right here. This is part of my 7th grade Civics and Economics course. And the intended time allowed is 45 minutes. You can see the SOL here has to do with civics and economics. The student will demonstrate knowledge of how public policy is made at the local, state, and national levels of government by, and here's the B part, describing how individuals and interest groups influence public policy. The point of this lesson is the latter, interest groups influence public policy. And this does manage to align with NCS Theme 10, Civic Ideals and Practices. What is civic participation and how can I be involved? And what is the role of citizen in the community and the nation? As a member of the world community, how can I make a positive difference? Those are some of the key questions that actually aligned very nicely with this unit. My guiding question was, how can a person successfully champion a cause or public policy issue? Not exactly a great question, but it does manage to do things what I wanted to. The closer and monitoring activity are the ways that this unit or this lesson is to be assessed. Key concepts include public policy and lobbying. Now, it's important to note at this point, and this actually is the second version of this, or second iteration of this lesson plan. So you see right now there's only one SWABOT, one objective. Identify, describe, and demonstrate the various aspects of lobbying. Originally there were two SWABOTs. The first one was supposed to be identify and describe the various aspects of lobbying. The second one was demonstrate an understanding of the lobbying process. Now, the reason that this changed was actually on the day that we gave the lesson. I decided that I didn't like my opening activity, my opener. And so I ended up cutting that out, moving the first activity to the opener, and then making the second activity still the second activity, well, the first activity and only activity, which was the lobbying exercise. Thus, the materials themselves changed a little bit because I got rid of the opening prompt. So originally, the opening prompt was to be to remind students to not get out their netbooks, and that they were to answer this question. Write down at least one school policy you wish could be changed. Describe some of the ways you might go about getting a policy changed. Now, not a bad opener, not a bad opener at all, but I decided that I preferred the first activity as an opener, which was to essentially read this this scenario and answer some questions. And the scenario was this one right here. Right here. Student Becky's having trouble with her class. In order for Becky to arrive at work on time, she needs to have a different schedule. She's met with her counselor and her employer, but neither would budge, so Becky gets her parents involved. They discuss how the employer cannot change the work schedule, and so they decide to look at the school. Becky's mother offers to go to school, talk to the counselor on her behalf, and after the meeting, Becky and her mother are left with a feeling of success because Becky was now going to have the schedule she needed. So, like I said, this was originally going to be the first activity, and then there would be these questions: who is the lobbyist, who is the interest group, who is being lobbied, and what is the issue at the heart of this lobbying example, and what do you think the lobbyist said or did to influence the decision. And I think the main reason I changed it was, as I said, in part was because I liked the idea of so much of moving beyond simply answering a question or two, which is what the write down at least one school policy you wish could be changed, which is, like I said, it's a fine example. But I thought, being able to move to something a little more, a little further down in Bloom's, being able to not only remember and understand, because you'd have to remember or understand terms like lobbyist, interest group, and things like that. But moving on to, applying, being able to apply those terms to the scenario listed above. So I really kind of like that idea, pushing that forward a little bit more. Plus, cutting out that that opener allows me to do more time with the lobbying activity itself. I mean, if we were talking about facets of understanding, it's similar to Bloom's in a way. We'd be moving beyond just explaining and interpreting, but also applying. So that was the first scenario. And then my transition here has to do specifically with a class. And this JEEP acronym came out of a handout that we have with a class right here. J, joining interest groups, E, expressing opinions, and P, participating in politics, JEP, JEEP. I came up with clever acronyms for everything here. So that's what that was all about. And then we would get into the formal role play itself, which was essentially students would be assigned different roles, and they would follow these little handout sheets that they were given and do what they were told on those activities. And I had scheduled a lot of time for this, a lot of time. I like the idea of doing a lobbyist, an interest group, and congressmen or senators, but I decided to throw in reporters in here as just kind of an extra little thing. And as we talk about this a little bit more, I'll delve into that reporter part later. The primary thing that I would be doing at this point would be circulating through the room. So it's kind of a very informal way of assessing learning. The more formal would occur afterwards, when students were asked to reflect upon this experience, to write down what their experiences were with the lobbying activity. Right here. What was your role in the lobbying activity? What did you do? I'm not sure if students understood the difference there. How do you feel with your role? Is there something you wish you could have done differently? Would you have preferred a different role? Which one? So, and here are the original instructions, essentially. Talk with your fellow congressman. The idea was kind of a pre-think. Meet with a lobbyist, meet with a reporter, be interviewed. Same thing here, meet with interest groups. For the lobbyists, try to get hired. I like the idea of hiring. Meet with senator representatives, be interviewed, return to the interest group. And then the interest groups would just meet and decide on their policy issue, hire a lobbyist, meet with a reporter, and get an after meeting memo type thing from the lobbyist, and then the reporters were to try to uncover what's really going on, get to the truth. So that's the activity in a nutshell. A few more things might be of interest. So here's the general learning activities for the unit itself. It's all of SOL 9, moving very slowly through SOL 9A, and then 9B, that's what we were in here, and then 9C, and then the unit day. My assessments were designed kind of all over the place. I had closers, unit tests, concept frames is kind of my more formalized other evidence, and then performance tasks were in here. I really should have included the lobbying day, because this is definitely a performance type activity. As you can see, the lobbying day more or less falls in the middle of all of this. So I have some introduction, then these first 3 days here were going to be 9A, and then I was going to do some stuff in 9B, and this was going to be this was going to be 9C, review day, project day, workshop day, project days. So I was trying to do a couple different assessments here, the standard SOL type test, some projects, some role plays, things like that. This one was, of course, designed to be more of a role play because I wanted students to understand things from the inside out rather than looking at it from the outside in. So that is generally what this one is about. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I did have a couple modifications, mostly having to do with grouping and whatnot. I tried to. The idea was essentially to pair students up of different abilities to help, complement one another, and then of course work with the cooperative teacher for any IEPs. So that is the lesson itself in a nutshell. Oh, there was one more thing. I knew that my cooperative teacher was more inclined to do lectures. And so I kind of intentionally designed this lesson as kind of a counterweight to all that. And most of my lessons themselves fall in that category, but this one was definitely intended to be something different than what they were used to. So, like I said, this is kind of the first blush, the first look at this lesson, and I'll be happy to share my further thoughts later on.